And we are back. Kevin's Corner, Kevin Bowen, Chris Presley across the way. Happy June. Boy, I can't believe June is actually here. We're on Baby Watch, a week away, a week from Wednesday. I feel like it's really hit me now, Chris. I'm like, oh my God, June 10th. It's June, the sixth month of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It comes quick.
Yeah, it's here. So shout out to my wife. We'll see what the podcast looks like the rest of this month. We're recording this on Tuesday morning, June 2nd. We'll hopefully be back next week. We'll see if Baby Bone comes early or whatnot. But then we will take a little bit of a break, and we will get back into it. And as of right now, I mean, the NFL operating business as usual. We'll see, what happens to training camp in late July and whatnot. But yeah, hopefully all things schedule-wise will continue to stay the same, and we'll give you a podcast once every week throughout the summer. Today's pod, we'll focus on breakout players. I feel like that's kind of a popular topic this time of year. There are two that really stand out to me. We'll get into those, and we have a ton of Twitter questions from last week that were kind of left over that we didn't get a chance to get to. So we will hit on that. So before we get into, obviously, the meat of the podcast, and you guys know full well, listen to this podcast, no one is listening to this for Kevin Bowen's political views. But with everything that's going on right now in the world, and even how Frank Reich addressed things on Monday with his Zoom call for the first 10 minutes, I'd be remiss not to talk a little bit about, what happened in our city, driving down here this morning to our MS Communications studio, which, for those of you that don't know, it's on the Circle here in the city of Indianapolis. 95% of businesses boarded up. Just kind of shocking signs for a downtown that I've seen grow up kind of in front of my own eyes, and love working down here and love to kind of living in this area for several years as well. But I thought Frank Reich was outstanding yesterday in how he addressed things. One thing that I am always reminded of in this community, and I'm sure you actually see it as well, Chris, Pacers and Colts-wise, those two teams have unbelievable character guys. And we can make the debate, and we often do, about, okay, where's the fine balance between talent and character and all of that. But to see what Malcolm Brogdon did down in Atlanta, and I know full well there are Colts players doing things behind the scenes that maybe aren't out in the forefront of it. But to hear Frank Reich's words, and he got into that preacher mentality of his background, it is awesome to see. And I just think the moral of everything to me is simply, let's just be good frickin' human beings.
Absolutely.
And it sounds very simple, and I know that the root of it is probably much deeper than that, but simply it's everyone treat others with respect. And luckily, I was raised that way. I grew up in Carmel, Indiana, which is, 90% white. But compared to, I would say most of my friends growing up, I probably was exposed a little bit more to some forms of discrimination. My uncle is African-American. I have mixed first cousins. My dad taught in a heavily segregated school district. And my mom even taught kids with mental and physical disabilities. So at a young age, I was kind of, really ingrained into me of like, Kevin, there are a lot of others out there in the world. And to have that level of respect for everyone is an absolute must, and it's kind of a prerequisite for certainly the Bowen family and should be for every human being. And that's all that I'm really going to say about it, that we all can do our part, and I think our part starts with our own actions, and that's simply treating people with a level of respect that every human being should be required to do, and that goes for skin color, religious views, how people look, talk, walk, whatever you want to do there. I was exchanging a few DMs with my guy Stan Cal, who our listeners know is a loyal follower of this podcast. He lives in Minneapolis. Just to hear his perspective on things and how his life personally, professionally has been impacted by this. I talked to my cousin on Sunday who lives in New York, who actually had COVID at one point, and just to hear, again, his point of view and his impact on things. I thought Frank Reich was outstanding in saying, I've got to listen. I've got to listen to my players because they are being impacted in different levels than maybe I am being directly impacted by it. So, listening to it, and simply just acting and being a good effing human being. Sounds simple, but I think we got to get back to that. So I know this podcast is a break for a lot of people. I don't want to, hit on it any longer. Like I said, no one listens to this for my political views, and you guys know full well, what are we, over 200 podcasts into this thing? I don't rant about many things on here, but I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention briefly here at the start, and we'll get into more of the Colt-centric chatter for what everyone is listening to this podcast for.
Yeah, I think, Kevin, that was well said, and I think every listener to this podcast agrees or should probably agree with what you said.
Be a good human.
Absolutely.
Be a good human. Very simple. Let's all do our part.
Well, getting into the Colts side of things, breakout players.
Yes.
Breakout players from each side of the ball. What are we looking at this year, Kevin, going into the 2020 season? Who is going to break out on the offensive end? Who is going to break out on the defensive side?
It is a popular topic this time of year. Shout out to our guy Cheeks in studio right now. You guys will remember Cheeks from Claws with Bowen. He's filming the podcast. So for our YouTube people out there, hopefully you enjoy Chris and I's ugly mug gracing your stream. But let's start offensively, and this is probably the more popular one. I think if you go to the defensive side of the ball, Chris, there's probably a debate with a couple of younger guys. And typically when you hear breakout, you do think of younger guys. But I will go with Paris Campbell. And first off, I thought great news last week. Paris talking about how he's been healthy and running routes for 2 months now. And it's one thing to be healthy, which obviously speaks, for itself, but it's another thing for a guy that his game has got to grow. He's got to become a complete wideout, because at Ohio State, it was, okay, here he is, this Percy Harvin, gadget type, Urban Meyer background type player. And then he gets to the NFL, and the Colts are adamant he can become a complete wideout. Like, we didn't take him wherever he was, 57 overall, something like that, just to be a gadget player and just to be a kick returner. We think he can be more than that. And he only plays in 7 games last year. He misses all of that practice time. He has got to be healthy. And while this spring, I think, is holding him back in a way because he's not able to be, in a full team setting and getting 7-on-7 and 11-on-11 work and with the Colts, the fact that he's healthy and is able to train and run a full route tree and has done that for 2 months now, that's important. I thought he was really honest in talking about how he has 2 goals for this season. One, a goal was to have more of a strict routine in the offseason. He talked about ART, like acute something release technique or something like that, some sort of training method that he's doing. He's doing massages 3 days a week. I'm talking to the training staff more, better nutrition. It just goes back to, it takes a lot to be a pro.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he is realizing that. And unfortunately, it hit him the hard way at rookie with all those different types of injuries and whatnot. So, Cheek, slide over here if you want to get on the old laptop. But it goes back to kind of the Nyheim Hines thing that I've talked about before, of Hines struggles with all those fumbles as a rookie during the preseason, and yet the Colts are drafting these higher character guys, and they feel like they can overcome the adversity that inevitably hits every rookie. Rock Ya-Sin had some adversity during his rookie season. We'll get into him a little bit later in these podcasts over the summer, but for a guy like Campbell, who, he graduated high school. He went to St. Vincent, St. Mary's, where LeBron went. Dude graduated high school at 16.
Nuts.
I mean, I was just hoping for a couple armpit hairs at the age of 16.
Keys to the car.
And gosh, can my voice not crack when I talk to a girl at a football game? This is just kind of, this dude is growing up fast.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a level of maturation. He's got a young family that the Colts feel like is there with him as well. So I'm excited to see him healthy. And in Frank Reich's offense, he, to me, is one of the more unique chess pieces. And I'll get into this a little bit more with our other guy that we're going to mention here as well. But I talked about this when Campbell was drafted. You watch his big plays at Ohio State. What stood out to me was they were plays that they gave him the ball behind the line of scrimmage. They gave him the ball on a screen, little dump passes, little crossers that are, 3 or 4 yards down the field, and then he does the rest. It is simple, high-percentage touches for him to go make a rare play. And by that, what I'm meaning is this is not Phillip Rivers. You have to take a 7-step drop. Your O-line has to protect for 5 seconds. Your wideout, in this case Campbell, has to go beat his corner and that safety and get behind the last line of defense, and then you've got to throw a ball that's on the money, and he's got to catch it. That's a lot of factors to go ahead and check off the box. With Campbell, he's a guy that it's like, no. Jet sweep, screen, high percentage touches where the pass rush can't get to you. You can say, all right, here's the ball. You go make a play with the ball in your hands, and that is a unique weapon to this offense. And I think that's needed, and I'm excited to see how all that unfolds.
It is, and back to your point about the maturity, coming out of Ohio State, that's one of the things the Colts coaching staff loved about him was his hard work and his leadership for that program.
Yeah, it wasn't just 4-3, and Frank Reich got intoxicated, and those are his words about watching Paris Campbell run 4-3 at the Combine last year and seeing that mini route tree that the Combine wideouts do inside of Lucas Oil Stadium and thinking, that speed on that turf, that is very, very attractive. But there is more to it than just the 4-3 speed, and it goes back to the Hines thing of his ability to bounce back. But I just think there's more there than just the Percy Harvin aspect to him. And even if he was only a Harvin, I think that's still a very needed chess piece in every offense. I think it's a unique sort of one-on-one mismatch guy that you have, but I still think there's a little bit more there. We all remember what he did in camp last year early on. I remember what he did even in that Cincinnati preseason game, the only preseason game that he played in last year. I think everyone was still crying over the Andrew Luck retirement, but that was a game where Campbell played and showed off that burst, and he's got a different gear. And last year we saw it a little bit. When he played, maybe it was injury related, but there just wasn't a whole lot there. Like 7 games, 100 and some yards, 7 yards per catch, not great numbers. And the injuries, they speak for themselves of like hamstring in training camp. Doesn't need surgery on that. Hernia early in the year, needs surgery on that. Breaks a hand against, Pittsburgh maybe, needs surgery on that. Breaks a foot against Tampa Bay, that finally ends the season, needs surgery on that. But I just think that he is an X factor to this offense and complements T.Y. Hilton and Michael Pittman really, really well. We'll see if he grows into that complete wideout. That is a little bit down the road. But I still think from a 4 touches, 6 touches, 70 yards, here's a big kick return, he can be a player that's really unlike any other in terms of the skill set you have on this offense.
Okay, so that's your offensive breakout player this year. Moving to the defensive side of the ball, same question. Who's built for a breakout season?
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because I go back to speed again, and I go back to a second-round pick as well. A lot of people would probably go with Bobby Okereke. I'll go with Kamoko Ture because I think he plays a more impactful position. Okereke could be on the field for 70, 80% of the snaps. And I'm not saying he will be because I like Anthony Walker. But even if he is, Kamoko Ture can be on the field for 20 snaps and impact the game in a bigger way than Okereke can. And that's just the nature of the position. And so I go back to this similar to Campbell. I'm not saying Campbell needs to play 90% of the snaps, but what I like about both these guys is obviously the speed is something that you can't teach. But they can make the quick, game-changing plays, and these guys don't need a lot of maintenance.
Right.
They don't need a lot of, you need A plus B plus C, A squared plus B squared. No, you don't need all of those things to happen to get to them. They can just go do their thing, and you really don't have to scheme a whole lot of it up. Campbell, a little bit more so. But Ture especially, You're the speed rusher. You're the dominant edge presence of a blue trait, get up the field and wreak havoc. Go do that. I asked Frank Reich about Turay last week, and he mentioned that he's got the length, he's got the get-off ability in terms of just that quick first step snap-wise, but the thing that Reich is adamant about that he has, that he still meshes all those things together, is the bend. And that is a very, scouting, 201 term of, he's got great bend. You can see it coming off the edge. And, I'm not trying to channel my inner, Joey Molinaro, Mel Kiper voice here. But when guys bend, they often lose speed.
Mm. They
feel like Turay doesn't lose speed. So when he does dip, he still is a 4'6" rusher at 6'4" and 255 or whatever. I think he might even be listed at 6'5". And that's what separated him coming out, because he went to Rutgers, which is already a black eye.
Mm-hmm.
They're in the Big Ten. The dude had 14, I want to say, sacks in 4 years. I mean, Cheeks, Chris, and I can get, 12 sacks in 4 years. 14 sacks in 4 years, and you're a second-round pick, that doesn't happen often. And the reason why is because the Colts are like, no. There are traits there to develop him into something more. They knew it would take some time. My worry is, can he stay healthy? I think that is the biggest worry, because he had a neck issue kind of his rookie year. Last year, he, dislocates and fractures the ankle against Kansas City. God, that was a gruesome injury.
If he can stay healthy, though, let's face it, he's got a hell of a coach teaching him.
Mathis. Yeah. That's pretty darn good. And I'm glad you brought up Mathis, because I think what Mathis has ingrained into him is you can be this freak athlete. You can throw 101. You can have the nasty curve. You can have that change-up that everyone thinks it's fastball coming out of your hand. But you've got to know how to pitch. You've got to know how to set up your pass rush moves. I'm doing this in the first quarter because I know there's going to be a big rush in the third quarter or fourth quarter on the third down, and the offensive tackle is going to think this, and I'm going to counter with that. That is, I think, where Mathis comes into play so much of you have a roll this Chapman stuff. Let's pitch like you're Greg Maddux.
Yeah.
That sort of aspect to it. Back-to-back weeks with baseball analogies on this podcast. Don't say we only know football.
Well, this might be the only baseball we get, so.
God, don't say that. Baseball's got to happen, right? They aren't that dumb, are they? Are owners that dumb?
At this point, I'm thinking maybe so.
You got to play. It's America's pastime. July 4th, start it up, boom. Everybody throw in there. You play 70, 80 games. People will be more entertained if you play 70 or 80 games. They're going to be more locked into it.
Right. It's a playoff race the entire time.
Boom. Exactly. Baseball. Don't be stupid. But again, when you're in your stance and you're in that get off right away, can the speed rush look like the bull rush? Can the speed rush look like a spin move? Can it look like, just a one-handed stab? Like all of those different things. I think that is where Mathis comes into play, because let's be honest, offensive tackles are extremely athletic, and they are at a premium position, and they can handle a lot of athletic moves on the opposite side of things. So you've got to become a more complete rusher. So I do think that's been a big part, or has needed to be a big part of Turay's maturation. And this one, to me, this means a whole lot to the future of this football team. Because when you look at that defensive line group right now, DeForest Buckner, unquestionably, is a future piece.
Yep.
But then you look at that group and think back to the guys in contract years. Justin Houston, Danico Autry, Sheldon Day, Al-Qadim Muhammad, a guy that I know Chris Ballard loves, especially on rundowns. Those guys are in contract years. Ben Banagoo, okay? You're younger than Turay, but okay, let's see something. Tyquan Lewis, same age as Turay. Let's definitely see something. There's a lot of depth and a lot of pieces in that defensive line group, but their futures, it's not It's not crystal clear. Not crystal clear. Ture's got to prove himself this year as healthy. I can be a double-digit sack guy, and I deserve a second contract here in Indianapolis. Because if he does that, now opposing offensive coordinators have to sit there on a Tuesday night and say, guys, they got Buckner in the middle, and they've got this Ture guy coming off the edge that has this dominant speed trait. Consistency. That's it. Keep up the weight. That has been a big thing for him. He played at like 230-ish his rookie year. He's got – I don't know if he'll ever be a 3-down guy, and I'm okay with that. Because if he can be a pass rushing specialist and be a 10-sack guy, that is enough for me. I think you have depth, and to Chris Ballard, that D-line group means so much that he's always going to have a bunch of guys up there. And this year, like, for example, I just posted it earlier today on 1075thefan.com. Jabal Shear's gone.
Mm-hmm.
No one has started more games in this defense. No one's even close to starting as many games as he has under Chris Ballard. I think Hooker's like 11 games behind him. So how do you replace Sheard? Ture on third down, the early downs, get Autry, get Lewis on the field, Al-Qadim Muhammad, Banagu, whoever can stop the run. And then Ture is he's your IndyCar package. He's the guy that comes on the field on third down and does something for you. So I think the maturation has been there. He was benched in his rookie year, healthy scratch one of those games because, he didn't have great practice habits. I think there's some maturation. But boy, man, he means so much. He means so much to the future of this football team. And I think it's on the front to make up for the back end. And by that, I mean this. I don't think there's enough schematically to do a whole lot in coverage. So I think your rush has got to be there. And that's where Buckner, Ture, Houston, those guys come into play.
So I'm in line with you on Campbell. I do want to ask, how far up that list of breakout players on the defensive side of things are you when it comes to Willis?
Oh, yeah. He is a good one. I think the thing with Khari Willis, and this is no knock whatsoever, he was too solid for me as a rookie to almost put him on this list. Yeah. I also don't know if I see a crazy high ceiling. I think he'll be a really solid player. Could he be an Antoine Bethea, like something like that? I mean, you'd sign up for that in an absolute heartbeat, of course. But to me, Ture just plays the position that matters the most on defense. Of like, if you can get a guy that has 2 or 3 rushes a game. I mean, think back to that Kansas City game of what Ture did then. Yeah. I mean, he helped injure Patrick Mahomes in that game and was just making it was a banged up offensive line for Kansas City, making those guys look stupid. So I like Willis a lot. I just think he's already pretty consistent and already pretty solid that I just don't think that he set the bar so low as a rookie that he can make this big jump. I put guys in this category of Okereke, Banagu, obviously Ture, maybe Rock Yassin, Marvell Tell, those guys. I just thought Willis was good, man. He was, and then amidst everything he was dealing with from a personal life standpoint. Shout out to Zach Kiefer's article for The Athletic if anyone missed that. But I don't know. Maybe I'm a sucker for the speed and just kind of Ture and Campbell have these great testing numbers, and it's develop them.
Yeah.
Because I see what the Colts see, but the development has got to be there. And, those are my 2 guys.
Cool.
Should we hop into Twitter time?
We should. Let's start with Steven. So he wants to know, or he's saying, it's been well documented that T.Y. Hilton needs to play well this season for the team's success in a new contract. How much will the progression, or lack thereof, of Pittman and Campbell affects the Colts' decisions to offer Hilton an extension? If they both prove to be viable long-term starters with the Colts, will the Colts be less likely to extend Hilton, or is the decision only dependent on how Hilton plays?
Yeah, Steven, this is terrific. And shout out to all of our Twitter questions out there.
A lot of good ones this week.
I love them. I don't know about you, Chris. This is your 3rd podcast, but I usually try to come in here with 1 or 2 topics I definitely want to hit on, but then I just get Twitter questions that I'm like, wow, these people's minds.
Yeah.
God bless our country. I mean, these people got some creative minds here. and stuff that I didn't even think of. Or
Yeah, the lens that each fan watches the game through is awesome.
It is awesome. So, Steven, thank you for this. I think, again, this is a great question. And I will say that the development of Michael Pittman and Paris Campbell should impact it. Will it be the total end-all, be-all? No. But I think there is something to where you got to look at Hilton and you got to look at the value of him. I'm writing, I'm saving some articles. And again, when the baby is born, folks, we will still have articles on this website. We have scheduled out articles. We will be good. The podcast is going to take a brief hiatus. Got to stay married. Got to continue to be a father.
You might have some like 3:30 a.m. articles, 4:15 articles.
You never know. Maybe the soothing of me typing on the keys will help Baby Bowen go back to sleep.
Love it.
I haven't, seen that in any of these articles that I've read about being a father. But you know what? Who knows? We'll have to check that out. But I'm working on an article, T.Y. Hilton with and without Andrew Luck. Just taking a dive into his numbers. There's a stark contrast with Andrew Luck and without Andrew Luck.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it's like 20 yards per game with Luck, without Luck. His 100-yard games, I want to say like with Luck, it's like 35% of his games played, he has 100 yards. Without Luck, it's like 13%. Now, outside of Matt Hasselbeck, Charlie Whitehurst, Scott Tolzien, Jacoby Brissett, Ryan Lindley, Josh Freeman, whoever else I'm missing, Brian Hoyer. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah, it makes a little bit of sense.
There's a gap,
Yeah.
a wide gap. Phillip Rivers is a lot closer to Andrew Luck and better than Matt Hasselbeck, you would think, than some other guys. So, can Hilton find that happy medium? Can Hilton get back to being, he's not a perennial Pro Bowl wideout without Andrew Luck. So that's going to impact the type of contract that he potentially gets. Andrew Luck's not walking through the door anymore.
Right.
So if you're the Colts, you have got to sit there and think to yourselves, okay, are we paying him Pro Bowl money, number one wideout Pro Bowl money? Or are we paying him like, okay, he's a 1, but he's not a Pro Bowl 1. That's, I think, what you're finding out in this season. But Campbell and Pittman, they can greatly impact. I still think it will come down to Hilton offers something different. He's been there before. He is the alpha. He's the one that strikes fear against the opposing coordinators and opposing DBs. Pittman and Campbell have to prove themselves. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a really good question. I'd say more towards the money is where it'll impact things. And less towards, bless you, cheeks, and less towards exactly if you bring him back or not. I would be hard-pressed if Hilton has a 14-game season of 800 yards not bringing him back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you still need 3 wideout. And why not 2 or 3 year deal? And wideout is always a need, but it's not like the most crystal pressing need flashing at you.
But I think you're right when it comes to the money, because you can say all you want that you want to retire a Colt, but if the money's not lining up and you're getting a better offer somewhere else,
that is a good point.
You are young. You can only make money for so long. You have a family. We'll see.
And I hear you out on that, and I think that about so many people with contracts. I do think Hilton is slightly different.
Oh, I'm not saying he's not.
Yeah,
I'm just saying
but I mean,
money does talk.
Without a doubt, and especially at wideout.
Yeah.
We know full well that it talks there. And the Colts are going to have to meet some threshold. But I do think with Hilton, there is something to, and I know he lives in Florida a lot during the offseason, there is something to the fact of like, okay, I have been here my entire career. I've already signed that second contract. This is the third contract, those things. So it'll be fascinating to watch, and that is a really long answer to Steven's question, but it was a great question.
All right, so Kevin, every year there's a surprise cut at the 53-man roster cut down. Matt feels like it's going to be Autry this year. He knows that Autry offers valuable flexibility, but he likes what Muhammad brings on the rundowns at the defensive end position. He also feels like Bandigu and Toure need to get as many reps as possible across from Houston in the speed package, which we touched on. if we are going to know whether or not they can be trusted as starters post the 2020 season. Also, Matt, wanted to say congratulations to you and Maddie.
Oh, thank you, Matt. Maddie actually has an older brother named Matt. Terrific individual. Matt Lub. I really hope that if we have a son being Matt Lubbers or even Ross Lubbers, that would be great. Especially Ross's competitive nature on the golf course. So we did kind of touch on this. You know, I don't think it's going to be Autry. Like, do they really care about the money? Because if they really cared about the money, would Brissett still be around? Like, Autry is just here for 2020. He's not here for past the season. So, like, in terms of the books, you know, do you need it for 2020? I don't necessarily think that you do. And they like Autry. They like his versatility. It means a lot to them. So I hear you out, and like there is a surprise cut, and it's a deep position group, and there is this veteran that makes some money, but I think there's some value to Autry. And I know Muhammad brings a lot on rundowns. I mentioned that earlier, but still, I just think from a three technique standpoint, the versatility I think means a lot. Like, God forbid DeForest Buckner goes down. Mm-hmm. Now you're scrambling a little bit. So I think you just have to keep that in mind. And again, I just don't think the money means that much to them. You know, Matt mentioned a little bit more, you know, about what you have from a Grover Stewart, Sheldon Day, you know, those Windsor, the rookie out of Penn State, all of those guys.
It's so deep.
It's so deep, but still, I think Autry gives you something. And I just don't think it's a must. You know, money-wise, I don't think you need it here in 2020, and he's a free agent. So he comes off the books, and then you move forward with some of these younger guys.
Well, we've talked about it a couple of times the last few podcasts, the return to the sporting world. David writes into us saying, in the world where athletes will likely be tested weekly, with lastly athletes testing positive, sitting out and being quarantined, a deep roster will be incredibly important, It also makes a capable backup quarterback that much more valuable, even if Brissett is overpaid.
Who asked this one?
This was David.
Yeah, capable, sure. But a guy making that amount of money, I mean, that is that's absurd. You know, it's what, the 20th biggest cap hit in the NFL. It is an incredible amount. And I understand David's question. I think that I'll be curious to see how it happens, and I guess this is like our weekly COVID question of like, okay, a player tests positive. What happens to that player? Do you have like an active list for COVID players? So your 53-man roster can still be at 53?
Yeah.
Does he just count as an inactive for the week? You know, how does that play out? Are you inactive automatically for 2 weeks? And now all of a sudden, instead of having 7 inactives, you have 6 each week. And I guess the game day roster, you are dressing 2 more this season. So there is, I feel like, a lot of kind of dominoes that the NFL still needs to announce on this and those sorts of things. So, yeah, I mean, having a deep roster, which I do think the Colts have better depth this year, that is a big benefit to them. And it's continuity from the same systems on both sides of the ball. But, yeah, I mean, paying a guy the amount of money that you're paying Jacoby Brissett. And I will never – look, I have said this before, and let me say it again. Jacoby Brissett is a very, very quality backup. I mean, right up there with any backup in the NFL in terms of the type of player you would want to be the backup quarterback. It's the money. That's the head scratcher for me. So the good news, it's 1 year, but still, David, I know you're my guy, but oof, that's a whole lot of cheddar.
One of the loyal female listeners to the podcast, JJ, and JJ, I apologize for saying he a couple weeks ago, wants to know, 2-part question here.
JJ's fiery. Joey knows full well.
I love it. I apologize. 2-parter here. The Colts have lost the last 5 years on their season opener. Will they break the streak this year against Jacksonville? And,
yes. Let's go there.
Okay, we'll start there.
Let's go there first. Yes. I mean, shit. 6 years is a long time. They better. I mean, man. And it is 6. It's not 5, JJ. It is, 2014, 2015, 2016, 17, 18, 19. 6 years.
It's crazy.
Terrell Pryor was the quarterback. Oakland Raiders.
I remember that game, yeah.
Great. I think Toller had a huge pick, or somebody had a huge pick late in that game, and Craig Toller. I mean, it's the easiest road game that you play all year at Jacksonville. I know it'll be hot, but just win it. Sounds so easy.
Second part of the question, record-breaking defensive completion percentage was 70% the last 2 seasons. What is your prediction for 2020?
Yeah, it has to be under 70%, and I think it will be. And I go back to what I said earlier, Chris. I think it's mainly because of what you have up front. I just think a presence of Buckner, a healthier Toure. I think that disruption will impact timing and will cause a little bit more of, here's a pump fake, and now I'm holding on to it, not 7-step, 5-step, 3-step, boom, boom, boom.
Right.
That's where I think it'll be lower than 70%. It's got to be.
That depth, and then that gives your fairly young secondary some time.
For sure.
On the back end.
Fair. I mean, think about it. Outside of Xavier Rhodes, that is a good point. I mean, Hooker's 23, 24. Willis he's got to be right around that age. Rock is right around that age. Kenny Moore is probably a hair older. Unless Xavier Rhodes is thrown in there, that is a young secondary, age-wise.
Right.
And that's the big thing I think Eberflus has mentioned of, which it's weird because, the Colts have really wanted to play their young defenders. It is kind of a form of, it's almost kind of a form of tanking without saying the word tanking.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, we're going to totally rebuild this defense. We're going to play the young guys. We're going to live through their growing pains. Rock Ya-Sin last year, but by the Colts coaching staff, was an average starter. They graded him out as an average starter. He played the most snaps of any, I think, defensive back on the team. There wasn't even a thought to benching Rock Ya-Sin all year. They almost were relegated to, here you go, young guys. Go into the fire and just live with it.
Even during, I can't remember the game, but there were, they had 4 pass interference. But they were like, no, you're staying out there.
Stay out there. No, stay in. It's like, Rudy,
right.
Stay in, stay in. You aren't coming out, brother. You are staying in the game. We got nobody on the bench. So it's an interesting line of thinking. It's not something that you usually hear a lot of NFL teams admit, but and I kind of agree with it. I'm kind of like, yeah, just throw the young guys in there. And now it's time. Now it's time for them to show up.
Kevin Wyatt writes us, if Vinatieri were to want to retire instead of coming back for the whole season, do you think the Colts would let him kick one last field goal in the game just so he doesn't end on that monstrosity that was the Titans game?
Wyatt. It's a strong name. I got a buddy of mine that has a baby, William Wyatt.
Wow.
Great individual. Okay, if Vinny were to retire, oh my gosh. I think Wyatt asked us the Vinny question last week. You remember that one? I forget which one it was, but Wyatt's big on Vinny, so he's doubling back here. No. I'm sorry, Wyatt. What does he want here? He wants a ceremonial kick?
Just come out,
for
place
one
it on a golden tee, and
yeah. Wyatt, I love you, Wyatt. I appreciate you listening, but this is the NFL. This ain't Carmel Dad's Club. This is national football. You got 16 games. These games are too precious. You just don't. I can't think of a team that's ever done this. And maybe I'm totally forgetting, but unless you're 2-13 at the end of the season, you aren't just running guys out there to say, here's your standing ovation and here's your ceremonial kick. Wyatt Adam Vinatieri is an incredible. I just saw he had a SportsCenter commercial. They're replaying all these.
Oh yeah.
SportsCenter commercials. He had his rings on. He couldn't go through the metal detector. Adam Vinatieri, first ballot Hall of Famer. But no, this is not. We don't need to just be. No, this is not the manager dressing on senior night. This is not. This is the National Football League. God, I sound like Chris Berman, getting ready to. Yeah, jeez.
That was a terrible game though. That Titans. I was at that game and
the block field goal.
Yeah.
And I feel bad because that is the last image, and there's a it's awful picture, but a great picture at the same time because it tells the whole story of Vinatieri hands on his hips as the punt block or kick block is happening and touchdown occurs. And boy, that was a huge game.
It will, yeah.
That could have totally changed the final month and a half of the season. I'm sorry, Wyatt. I know I sound like an ass, and I just talked about how we all need to be better human beings, but no. Chase McLaughlin or Rodrigo Blankenship, come kick.
John writes in a follow-up question. Brian Decker was hired after the 2017 drafts, and seems the characters of the players that we have drafted has changed.
Oh boy, John, this is our follow-up on the 2017 draft of the Chris Ballard missing on those first 4 picks.
Right.
So let's add another excuse for the 2017 draft. In all seriousness, John, you are correct. Brian Decker was, and he is, for those that don't know, he's the former Army guy, big character, huge part of Chris Ballard's draft process, I guess. And there is something to that effect. I would say more with Wilson. I never got the impression that, like, Basham and Banner were, like, bad character guys. And, like, Wilson, I mean, I don't think he's, like, bad character. I just think he was drafted at the age of 20, and there's just, like, a maturation process to it that's just not there. I do think character's probably been a little bit more emphasized in the recent drafts. And I think it all goes back to what I've said several times about this. What you like about Chris Ballard is when things don't go well or exactly according to plan, or they don't lead to wins and losses on the field, he alters his approach. He has core beliefs, but the core beliefs are not like buried 100 feet under the ground and we're never going to see them.
Mm-hmm.
No. Like, he can make some altering to that. I'll dabble into free agency a little bit more after, going 7-9. I'll address the skill group early in the draft after having a much more of a defensive focus and an offensive line focus in previous years. But I mean, folks, we all can say out loud, Chris Ballard missed on the first 4 picks of the 2017 draft. Missed is a light term. He gargantuanly missed. I don't know if that's a word, but it
is today.
If Ryan Grigson makes that draft, people want Ryan Grigson. They want to go slash Ryan Grigson's tires. Like, okay, he missed. The great news, he hasn't really missed since then. Certainly didn't miss in 2018. Gosh, I feel like we get a question like this every week. It's like he changed his approach. It's smart, because if he didn't change his approach, who knows if he'd still be here having a job. But great news for the Colts. He changed the approach, and these recent drafts have had a crystal clear plan. The players drafted have had a similar kind of background and everything. And I think it's led to a much more solid foundation than the previous regime had.
Well, let's stay in that draft class and on a player that you just mentioned in that last answer with a question from John. What if the Colts would have selected Juju Smith-Schuster at the 46th pick instead of Quincy Wilson?
I mean, could we do this every draft? Is this the game that fans play? Well, Joey Molinaro would be pissed, for one, because Juju wouldn't be on his football team. I mean, don't we do this? Don't we do this a lot? The Pacers could have had Draymond Green. I feel like everyone does.
Kawhi Leonard.
Kawhi Leonard.
Have to trade for George Hill. We could have had Kawhi Leonard.
Shouldn't have traded Kawhi. John, what if they drafted DeAndre Hopkins and not Bjorn Werner? I mean, I hate to just throw more fire onto it. Landon Collins instead of Phillip Dorsett.
Yep.
You know what, John? They also drafted T.Y. Hilton when a lot of people didn't draft T.Y. Hilton. They also drafted Darius Leonard when Bleacher Report said this is an F.
Mm-hmm.
Letter,
and continues to get left off of
lists and all of that
crazy
stuff. Like, it's just a tough rabbit hole to go down. John, I hear you. I'm a fan. I do it with Notre Dame sports all the time. Notre Dame was the only – Klay Thompson was supposed to commit to Notre Dame. Kevin, stop it. John, have a drink.
All right, question from Robbie, and he needs some life advice here, Kevin.
Oh, boy.
So he's been a Bruce Arians fan since his time in Indy, which I think most of us have been. He's kept track with him when he went to Arizona and now in Tampa Bay, and he hoped that he would win and do well without, hurting the Colts, that is.
Yeah.
And now he's not sure how to feel or even if he should feel anything now that Brady is going to be leading the team. Years of ingrained anti-Brady and Patriots propaganda has left him feeling confused. Can you and the people of Kevin's Corner help him on how he should feel?
All right. Well, everyone in the room's has got to chime in on this one. Robbie, I think, is from the UK, so Robbie's been really keeping track of Bruce. Bruce Arians, just an unbelievable individual. I'll never forget him at the Colts Christmas party a few years ago, just throwing him back, or a few years ago, 2012. Just a great human being.
Yeah.
You talk about a guy that you want to hang out with. I love Arians. I love him. My 2 cents in this market, if you cheer for Tom Brady, you can't drive in the state of Indiana. You can't. You just aren't a Hoosier. People hate Tom Brady, hate him, and I don't think you can cheer for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year if you are a fan of the Colts. I think it's part of your fandom.
It's taken me until about 2 or 3 years ago to finally say that I respect Brady and can respect
that's big.
and can respect what he was able to do for how long he's been able to do it.
Good for you for finally getting there.
But I will stop at respect. I will not cheer for Tom to win any meaningful ball games.
Cheeks, what do you think? Should they be cheering for the Bucs? Should they get over it, or should they say, you know what, Tom Brady? No, chime in, slide in there.
Well, I think that I don't know. Like you guys just said, like Chris just said, Tom Brady is a really good competitor. Not at golf, obviously.
No.
And I think that, you have to take those little wins. So it'd be tough. Is he a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan? Is that what he said?
He wants to cheer for Bruce Arians, their head football coach.
Right.
But, Tom's the QB, so he isn't sure if he can do that.
Well, then, I say, yeah, cheer for the play calling, I guess, but not the person throwing it, because Bruce Arians, like you said, seems like a great coach, a great guy. And they'll probably be successful, but, yeah. Nah, I wouldn't cheer for Tom. I think he's getting old, too, like we saw last season. So
A little bit washed up. Cheeks right there. Cheeks right there on our 1s and 2s.
Love it.
Yeah, I would say no. Fans are going to say no. You can't do it, Robbie. Sorry.
You can still wear the hat, the whatever style hat that is.
What do you call that? The little it's got a name. It's like Bruce. Now I'm googling Bruce Arians. It's cat. Go to the next question.
Alrighty, Thomas wants to know, with our team getting better and better.
Kangle.
There you go. With our team getting better and better, do you think we will ever upgrade our conditioning coaches? It is so sad to see so many of our players get injured over and over again to the point that they retire because they don't want to spend another season rehabbing.
Thomas, that's a little aggressive. It was updated. It was. They've changed their strength and conditioning program. I would say it's probably been one of the biggest focuses Chris Ballard has had. But having said that, they still rank really, really low in these injuries. So it's a fair question, but the medical staff's the only thing that stayed the same. The nutritional program has been overhauled. Strength conditioning has been overhauled, I think, a couple of times. We'll see how it's handled this year. Because I'm going to be, how are guys going to be no spring off-season program? They've all been training on their own. They haven't had, this direct kind of eyesight, if you will, or oversight from their medical staff that they usually have for 9 weeks during the spring. So we'll see.
You touched on this a little bit, or you wrote an article on 1075thefan.com a few weeks ago talking about the rookies'
playing time
this year. And John, to touch on that, wants to know, will any of the 2020 draft picks start game 1 of the season?
That's a good question, John. There's a chance none of them do. Having said that, I will stand by what I've said for weeks now. Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor will be making important plays for this football team in the fourth quarter very early in the season. But, who knows? You go 2 wide receivers, and you might want Zach Pascal on the field to start the season because Zach Pascal can do no wrong. Maybe Campbell will be on the field with Hilton to start a game. And Frank said yesterday that he feels like there's I believe the phrase was an inherent responsibility to give Marlon Mack the early starting nod, which makes sense. And Marlon Mack's a 1,000-yard rusher last year. I don't want to, again, lose sight of that either. But, yeah, go back to our rookie playing time pod for any of you that missed it. It was probably a month ago. So I will say Michael Pittman does start, and Jonathan Taylor is probably not going to start, but there could and will be a time in 2020 where he plays, a starting role.
Is there a loophole answer that Jordan Glasgow starts on kickoff team?
Oh, gosh. Look at you. Look at you. That was sneaky. Chris Presley getting sneaky on us here on Kevin's Corner. Sure. God, that was sneaky. I mean, technically he's not a starter, but sure. The Glasgow family will be happy as they watch their 3 sons play in the NFL. Can you imagine having 3 sons play in the NFL at once?
It's awesome.
My mom's, like, happy when that like a listener compliments me on the radio, like, and these people are in the NFL.
Yeah, like making CYO A team was like,
yeah,
all right,
a big deal, right? And I was like, oh man, I hit 4 3-pointers, Mom, and good for the Glasgows.
Tanner wants to know what your over/under sack number for Toure is this year. He's kind of pumped to see him back on the field, as I think we all are, and he remembers seeing some flashes from him early last year.
Yeah. Okay, Tanner, this is a good one. Over/under sack number for Toure. I'll say 8.5.
Wow.
I was going in between 7.5 and 8.5.
Okay.
Got to factor in injuries. I think for his career, look this up if you don't mind.
He is 5.5.
5.5, and
4 and 18, 1.5 last year, but obviously injuries. So.
And that's what I was getting at. 5.5 sacks, and there's no way he's played more than 20 games. I mean, last year he only played 5? He got hurt in week 5, and I think he missed a game, if I'm not mistaken, in like September. So, yeah, I think you got to factor in injuries, which Vegas will do. If you can find over/under on Kamoko Toure sacks, then you've found the most degenerate site in the world. So, yeah, I'll say 7.5.
He's played 18 games in his career.
5.5 sacks in 18 games. It's not bad for a young guy who barely plays. I'll go 8.5, which might be a hair high.
Okay. Question for me about.
Oh yeah, Tanner wanted to ask you about the vault. Here, I'll ask you this one.
Okay.
All right, this is for Chris from Tanner. Who does Jeremy Pruitt start week 1 in Norman? You're telling me Tennessee's playing at Oklahoma week 1?
It's week 2.
Week 2. Okay.
We got Charlotte as I would say a tune-up game, but after losing to Georgia State at home last year. They're no longer tune-up game. You no longer look past people as a Tennessee.
You don't, which is a sad state. Okay, he says got a huge QB room. JG, Maurer, Bailey, and even Taysom Hill. I thought it was Taysom Hill.
Taysom Hill transfer from Maryland.
Okay, will he stick with JG as the 6th man in quotes? Looking forward to hearing your response to a Vols question from time to time. GBO, what's GBO?
Go Big Orange.
Gotcha. Did I tell you I went to Neyland Stadium last year?
No, you didn't.
Not for a game.
Okay.
Is it still called Neyland?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be. My brother-in-law, Matt Lubbers, won Masters lottery tickets.
That's right.
So on our way down, Ross, my father-in-law, Mike, and myself, we played golf in, where did we play first? Louisville, and then we stayed in Knoxville.
Okay.
Then we played golf in some city in North Carolina, like Waynesville or something. But, yeah, we stayed in Knoxville, and we tried to sneak into the stadium. We walked all the way around it, and, man.
It's massive.
And I love it. I was just kind of right there. It's like right in the middle of it all, and that was really cool. Right. Looks really old, super old from the outside. I think that we kind of started on the non-renovated side maybe. But, yeah, that was awesome to see. It's on the bucket list to go to an SEC football game for me.
It is quite an experience. I went a couple years ago. When I worked for Wave 3 in Louisville, we got to go down on the sideline because we covered all the sports in Kentucky. So sideline against the Kentucky team that wasn't very good. Tennessee wasn't very good. Still packed stadium and awesome to be a part of.
Ross, you should have done that for your bachelor party, man. Go to an SEC football game. I'm sure that would have been an easy ticket for us to find.
To answer the question, obviously,
who you got?
This isn't a Vol podcast. I say that I don't know just as much as Jeremy Pruitt doesn't know. Jared Garantano, I thought was going to transfer because of all of the speed bumps and turbulence that he's hit as his time at Tennessee. I think you now just have to pay attention to practices. See who they roll with week 1 against Charlotte. I think that's going to be your indicator. If Garantano goes out there, which I think he probably will, and doesn't produce in the first 3 to 4 possessions, you got to pull him for Maurer and get Maurer as many reps as you can before you head to Norman, like you said. So
I love it. I love that these teams are playing. I hope these non-conference games happen. But
yeah, so do I.
Notre Dame played in Norman back in 2012. Got a huge win on their way to the national title game, which they were competitive with Alabama for a couple plays, and then I still stand by it. If Tyler Eifert should have caught that ball on 3rd down, it should have been overruled the first series of the game. It's a totally different game. That's me being a fan.
I was at the Stanford game that year. The goal line stand in the rain.
Yeah,
the
great
field.
game.
Yeah.
Stephon Taylor, I think, was their running back, and when they got stuffed at the
Believe
goal
so.
line. Yeah, that was a great game. God, David Shaw was pissed. Talk about a guy that was kind of falling off a bit.
I know.
All right, let's go relatively quick with I think we got a lot more left. So.
All right. So Bratzu, thought on adding one more pass rusher, Everson Griffin or Clay Matthews at linebacker. Very Justin Houston dependent right now.
Should we start there?
Yeah. Let's
Yeah,
go one.
he's got a couple. Okay, probably not. I think Ballard's all about let the young guys play. And again, they love Turry. I understand the question, but from the Colts thought process, I think they want to see these young guys.
Offensive tackle depth is still a big concern, and no backup center on the roster. That seems a little odd to him. What's the plan?
Yeah, that's very fair. I couldn't agree more with that. Backup center, maybe Javon Patterson, your 7th-round pick from last year. Danny Pintner, could he play center for you? I think they feel like guard or center for him.
Third part of this question, teams very effective with blitz pressures and sack percentage last year despite low attempts. Can we expect more this season?
Boy, I would hope, but I wouldn't hold your breath too much. I just think a more consistent rush from your front four, I guess, and maybe when you bring one blitz, that's what they want and that's what they need. Because you want to commit a lot to coverage.
Mm-hmm.
I think in this scheme, that's what you want to do. But those are all really good questions, Bratzu.
Adam wants to know why we wouldn't play Brissett if Rivers goes down. If they have a shot to make the playoffs, in the scenario, he'd rather put that $21 million cap hit to work. He knows that Eason is raw and needs playing time, but he would just rather see him have a redshirt season, i.e. Carson Palmer.
God, I forgot Carson Palmer was a redshirt guy. Comparing Carson Palmer to Jacob Eason, though, a little bit laughable. A little bit different college resumes there. I believe Carson Palmer did this. Striking the Heisman. Don't think did Jacob Eason win a Pac-12 of the Week award?
Right.
Number 1 overall versus 122 overall, a little bit different. And Adam, this is in reference, I think, to my stance about start the clock on Jacob Eason if Rivers gets hurt. Obviously, they're going to play Brissett, and I kind of hear you out, Adam, of like you have the $21 million cap hit, might as well do something with it. So yes, I if they have a shot to make the playoffs. You're going to put the 20. Yes, of course you are. You're going to play Brissett. I know I'm in the wrong. I'm just stating my long-term view of it because Eason needs game reps.
Tanner wants a way too early prediction from you. In the 2021 draft, what positions do you see the Colts addressing with their first 2 picks, future potential weak spots, or a position where a player walks?
Ooh. Okay, first 2 picks, 2021. Boy. Let's go quarterback. And offensive tackle.
Wow.
What are you surprised about? Quarterback? Tackle. Yeah, I just think Brissett leaves in free agency and Rivers could retire.
Very true.
Very soon. It's like, do you believe in Eason or do you not? So that's just my thinking of like, to me, until long-term quarterback is solved, I will probably say quarterback very early in every draft. Like, that's just how much I think of the position. Offensive tackle, I thought you should have taken one earlier than... But you didn't even take one.
They didn't take one. Yeah, that was surprising.
Yeah, Pinter is a guard. I'd throw defensive end though. I'd throw corner in there, maybe even safety, depending on what Julian Blackmon looks like. Oh boy, we're already getting into draft debates. Hell, if Hilton walks wide out, tight end, you got my juices flowing.
Andy asks, will Hines see a decreased role on special teams / more on offense with the role given to Isaiah Rodgers?
Well, Andy, obviously Isaiah Rodgers has to make the team. And I think that's where you get in the number crunch of like, are you going to put Isaiah Rodgers on the team and strictly put him as a returner and he'll be the 6th corner and he's your gunner? Okay. Or do you say, Hines is really only going to play third down. He can go play punt returner too. Give Hines more of a role, and then Campbell could be your kick returner.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of side with Campbell at kick return, Hines at punt return. And if you think Campbell means too much to your offense, put Hines at kick returner. Now, maybe you have room for Rodgers, and if you do, go ahead. But, that's a 170-pound kick returner, punt returner that, ball security better be, and maybe I have the Nyheim Hines thought process. We are a big Hines guy, by the way, on this podcast. I don't know if you knew that. Joey and I have always been big Hines guys. I don't know, maybe Zach Pascal back there? He's trustworthy. Chester Rogers is gone, so you obviously have to replace that. But I don't think Hines will have a decreased role on special teams because I really don't think his offensive role will be that much more increased. He's going to play on third down. He has played on third down.
Over under 9.5 interceptions this year for Phillip Rivers. That question was asked by Max.
Max, great name. Over, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's too gunslinger-y.
If you don't count the first 2 years in San Diego where he was a backup, he's only gone under that number 2 times in his career.
Look at you. Great stat. I don't think Joey ever looked up stats.
I got to be prepared.
That was awesome. That was terrific. Give that to me one more time.
Aside from the first 2 seasons in San Diego.
When they started Breeze.
Phillip Rivers has only gone under 9.5 interceptions twice in his career. He's averaging 14 interceptions per year if you count the 14 years that he's been a starting quarterback.
Wow. That's definitely over. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't have him in front of me. Maybe you do. He threw picks with Reich. It's not like he threw 2013, 2014, 2015 with Reich. He still threw interceptions. It's not like he was 7 picks per game or 7 picks per game. That's like Nathan Peterman. 7 picks per season. It's not like he was that. So
yeah. Nick wants to know who will be the kicker week 1. Excluding Vinatieri's one come out and kick a field goal.
Exactly, yeah. Let him ride off into the sunset and carry him out on a throne. Who do I see being the kicker week 1? Boy, that's a great question. Let's go with Chase McLaughlin. He impressed me late last season. I think there's some – it's not the greatest leg in the world. I don't watch him and be like, damn, that dude's Justin Tucker. I mean, who is? But yeah. I think he's solid. He's got a nice little pre-kick routine. As a golfer, I have a horrible pre-shot routine. I don't even know if I have one. I just like what he did last year. He came in the building. He just made kicks and did his job. And
that's tough shoes to fill. I mean, you're walking into kind of a crapshoot almost.
Oh, my gosh. I'm sweating thinking about it.
We touched on this in the beginning a little bit, obviously, with the intros. But Garrett wants to know, outside of Okereke, Willis, and Campbell, do you see a surprise performance by any Colts this season?
If it's a good question, Garrett. What about Marvell Tell at corner? Now he's got to get the opportunity. That's the hard thing for B. I'd love to see, for the future of this franchise, you'd love to see Banagoo flash a little bit more. Because remember, Justin Houston's in a contract year. Turay flashing is not enough for the future of that defensive line group. You need Banagoo to flash a little bit. Maybe a healthy Trey Burton. We haven't talked about him a whole lot. I'll have something posted on him tomorrow morning. Check that out, 1075thefan.com.
Thanks to the Bears for paying for him.
Yeah, that's absurd. So, those are some of the names.
All right, Forge and Blue, who's a big Colts fan living in Tennessee, he wants to know, or they want to know, what's more realistic. Don't want to say he. Don't want to, you never know. What is more realistic to happen in 2020? Taylor runs for 1,000 yards. Pittman Jr. has 1,000 yards receiving, or Phillip Rivers has 4,000 passing yards. Again, love the podcast.
These questions I love. These are great questions. I love these debatable questions. Rivers, 4,000 yards should be a given.
Agree.
In my opinion, even with how much you want to run it. Boy, this is tough.
Again, back to the stats on Rivers. Only 3 times has he gone under 4,000 yards in his career.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, nowadays, quarterbacks just kind of fall out of bed. You start 16 games, unless you're incompetent, you're going to throw for 4,000 yards.
I mean, he almost threw for 5,000 last year, 4,600.
Rivers did?
Yeah.
Damn.
And you got to think, for only going 3 years under that 4,000, you had LT, you had Melvin Gordon. Like, you had good running games, and that still didn't prevent you from passing.
It's weird. They had great running back talent. They just never ran it that well. It's just, you would hope that here that's going to change. Okay, Jonathan Taylor, to get 1,000, I feel like he's going to need an injury to Mac for like 2 to 4 games. And obviously Taylor stay healthy.
Right.
So now I will say this, there's definitely been more rookie running backs that have gone over 1,000. I mean, off the top of my head, Fournette, I think was definitely over 1,000 as a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
Phillip Lindsay, Saquon, homeboy out in Oakland last year. He tore up the Colts or had a good game against Colts. Jacobs,
Josh.
Yeah. Josh Jacobs. Yeah, from Alabama. So I think what I'm saying is rookie running backs are more prevalent than rookie wideouts getting 1,000 yards. A.J. Brown did it last year. I think before that it might have been Michael Thomas. So, but man, then you think I think an injury would have to happen at wideout or running back for either of those two guys to get there.
A great name here. Sugar Cookies wants to know, how do you think Phillip Rivers will perform with a better offensive line and a worse receiving core?
I love Cookies. Absolutely love them. Shout out to Cookies.
Cookies in general, or the person asking the question?
Well, I love Sugar Cookies. I don't know this person, but I'm probably more of a chocolate chip guy. No one loves desserts more than my brother Ryan Bowen. No one. No human being loves dessert. Him and his fiance, Kristen Kremp. Shout out to Chris. They're getting married next month. Kristen, terrific individual. They've been to every ice cream place in the city. Every ice cream. I mean, they should work for Yelp and just rate ice cream places. I want a sugar cookie after this podcast, and it's 10:20 in the morning. Okay, how do I think Phillip Rivers will perform with a better O-line and a worse receiving core? Sugar cookie, just saying it makes me smile. I think is a really good question. This is the debate with Rivers. No more Mike Williams, no more Keenan Allen, but yet he's got this great offensive line. How's that going to work? Man, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, top 3 wide receiver duo in the NFL?
I mean, when you have both over 1,000 yards, yeah.
I mean, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, boy, I know I'm forgetting some others. Definitely forgetting some, but damn, I mean, those two are, whew. I mean, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, I know they aren't two wideouts, but what I'm saying is the personnel was great at the receiver position, at the top end of that receiver position. It goes back to something that I think I posted late last week. There is so much pressure on this offensive line group in Indianapolis and even the receivers, more so the O-line, to make sure Phillip Rivers looks good. Phillip Rivers needs help. He needs some help. That O-line has got to be healthy and elite, and the wideout group has got to do more of its part than it did last season. So I think Phillip Rivers will be a top 15 quarterback in the league this year. I don't think he'll be top 8. I think he'll be kind of in that, 10-ish range. But, again, the O-line and the wideout group, they got to do their part, man.
Sean asked, with a 17-game season on the horizon, how important will it be to draft offensive linemen within the first 3 rounds every year going forward?
Chris, these are the questions I'm talking about. Where do these people think of this stuff? That thought would never even cross my mind. It's a terrific point. Yes, 17-game seasons. Do you need more offensive linemen? Sure. Yeah. And I think the Colts looked into they were looking into some offensive linemen. They did not totally disregard that position in the draft. Obviously, their actions did, besides Pinter. But they, if Josh Jones would have been there at 75, I know I've said that before. I think he went to Arizona a few picks before. I'm curious how that would have gone. But yeah, that is a good point. And good news, that falls in line with Chris Bauer's thinking.
Joseph, have the Colts ever announced a replacement for Rex Hogan?
I don't think so. For those that don't know, Rex Hogan was co-assistant GM. I think that's what is. Or no, I think he was VP. I want to say he's VP of player personnel here in Indianapolis. Now he's assistant general manager at the Jets. That's your Jets connection. He was with Chris Ballard and Ed Dodds here for quite some time. I don't think so. I think Kevin Rogers, who's been a longtime scout, really good guy, he's been promoted to director of pro personnel. So I guess that's maybe like third in line, right? Ballard 1, Ed Dodds 2, Kevin Rogers would be 3. I think so. Maybe I'm forgetting somebody.
Question we touched on a little bit before as well. Colts Law asked, what do you feel the number one change the Colts organization can do to prevent the laundry list of injuries they have each year?
Shout out to Colts Law, Lawrence. That's my guy. Great question. I got no freaking idea. I mean, I don't. You know? Like, is there a whisper out there? Where's the injury whisperer? You know, who can make all these stop? They've exhausted so many resources. I don't know. I wish I had a better answer. You need a consulting group come in and you all sit around a room and you analyze it like none other. I wish I had a better answer. I always give answers to questions. It's the number one rule on Kevin's Corner. But man, Colts Law, I'm sorry. I don't got it.
I'm going to butcher the name here, and I apologize in advance. I don't know if it's Dara.
Dara from Ireland, if I'm not mistaken.
Love it. All listeners all over the place. It's outstanding.
We really do, man. It's great. I mean, if you looked at like our demographics via the listenership, like they throw this map out on Omni, it is really cool. Like all the countries and continents, to be honest with you, that people listen.
Well, Dara wants to know, what's been the coolest standout moment for you being a Colts beat reporter?
Wow. Whew. Honestly, probably going to your side of the world, going to London for that game.
Yeah.
Terrible game. But, yeah, we had dinner at Kensington Palace on Friday night before that game.
Awesome.
I mean, it was going up and down Regent Street, and that was really, really cool. Jim Irsay's loyalty to his employees was just outstanding. I would say that, you know, game atmospheres I absolutely love. I'm like a sucker for that stuff. Like I told you earlier, I want to go to an SEC game.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a sucker for like the atmosphere environment. So I don't want to like overlook any of that. Now the NFL, it's not the same environment as college football, in my opinion, but it's still really cool. I'd say some of the Hall of Fame stuff a few years ago when Marvin went in and Tony went in the same year, was able to go to their after party, and that was like,
wow.
I mean, a who's who of like, you just turn and gold jacket of, you know, all these former, or I guess, Hall of Famers, I should say, that are at the party, and I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, I'm a bus boy. Excuse me, I'm just not trying to hit the ice sculpture over there of Marvin or whatever. Yeah. That stuff. Going to some of the owners' meetings have been cool as well.
All right.
Very fortunate. Very, very blessed.
Smooth Smith, which is an outstanding name as well. Over or under 24.5 touchdowns this year for Phillip Rivers?
I'm sure you got the numbers, Chris. I'm going to say over. I just don't think 24 touchdowns is a whole lot for a quarterback.
I didn't crunch the numbers on this one.
Okay.
I just looked at the numbers and
slacking as we get late in the podcast.
I know, but based on just the eyeballs of looking at the numbers, seeing how many years it was in the 30s or over the 24.5, which was most of it, that's why I'm going slightly over.
Okay.
And the only reason I even say slightly is because of the amount of interceptions Rivers has thrown the last couple of years increasing, that if he continues to stay on that trajectory of throwing that many interceptions and the way that we have a double-headed monster in the backfield, I think he still goes slightly over 24 touchdowns.
I think touchdown numbers are hard to predict, too, because, like, you can get in the red zone and just, like, weird stuff happens.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and not to bring up just a sour point for my guys here that I gambled on the Super Bowl with. They know who they are. I won't reveal their names on air if they don't want them mentioned. We bet on Damian Williams to score the first touchdown in the Super Bowl. FanDuel gave some great odds.
Yeah.
Damian Williams, they run that funky fourth down play where, like, they lined up, like Michigan lined up in the 1960 Rose Bowl or something like that. It was a weird kind of full house looking backfield. And I swear Damian Williams got in live. Now, they made the right call. He doesn't get in. So then he goes to the bench. So then they bring in the other Williams kid. He comes in. He gets it. Luckily, he's stuffed. So now I'm sweating. I'm saying, Damian Williams, get back in the game. He goes in the game. Mahomes runs that little short field option. And Mahomes doesn't pitch it.
Yeah.
I'm like, pitch it. He's wide open. You can't take the hits in the Super Bowl. So that was a gambling rant. It's also a rant of like, who knows what happens in the red zone?
Yeah.
Quentin Nelson touched the football one time.
Mm-hmm.
Touchdown numbers can be weird.
A thinker here. So Sam asked, if you could drop yourself into a historical event in world history and live that event out, what would that event be?
Boy. Tell you what, Sam, in 50 years, some people might say right now.
I don't think anyone's dropping themselves into.
Well,
2020.
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like in terms of history. I mean, I was saying to my wife the other night, like our baby is about to be born into one of the crazier times of my lifetime.
Yeah.
9/11 would certainly be up there. You know, just out of curiosity, and I am kind of a sucker for history and like geography. I kind of like that stuff. Not because this would be a great time to live and thrive in the world, but like I would be curious to be in the World Wars or like the Civil War or pandemic related, like the Spanish flu. I've read a lot about that. So yeah, I'm a nerd for like the history stuff. And so I would kind of want to see just like how the world reacted back then. But great questions.
I thought tying to this weekend with the space launch.
Yeah.
I put myself back into the space race and even watching it this weekend and how we've had all these technological advances, you're nervous because you don't know what
100%.
could happen. And you don't want to fear that anything does go wrong, but you're about to send men flying into space.
It's correct. I was texting my dad over the weekend about that. My dad's a huge NASA astronaut guy. He applied to be the teacher in space back in the late 80s. And unfortunately, that obviously was tragic and horrific. And then the Challenger exploded back in, I want to say it was like 87, something like that. So him and I were just exchanging some messages. He was one of the 10,000 applicants. And he went down to Cape Canaveral, I think, for the launch before the Challenger. But, yeah, that would be really cool. Certainly, because it was like, yeah, that's a great one because that is a rate. I mean, that's like a competition, which I love competition as well. So, yeah, great question, Sam.
Nick wants to know your thoughts on the defensive line rotation and playing time with all the talent at the position.
Okay, starters, Houston, Grover Stewart, DeForest Buckner, and let's go with Autry on the rundowns. I think the pass downs, you take Stewart off the field, you bring Turay on the field, and then you need one more rusher. Maybe Autry stays, maybe Lewis, maybe Banigou. I mean, you're going to have some guys like play inside. If you were going to throw Banigou out there as Justin Houston playing inside, that's maybe not ideal. Muhammad, Sheldon Day. I mean, you're going to rotate so many of them. Windsor, maybe the 6th round pick out of Penn State. I went back and watched the DeForest Buckner Super Bowl tape for an article that I'm going to write here. And, I mean, Buckner plays a whole lot. He comes off the field like every third series, but I'm not sure if I've seen a defensive tackle have that type of stamina late in a game before. I mean, that dude was just... He's 6'7", 300 pounds, and he's moving like he's a linebacker in the fourth quarter. He had the pressure on Mahomes on the 3rd and 15, which is a play he probably doesn't want to see again if he would have been there a half second later. I think last year the Colts rotated every series on their D-line. Maybe not that often, but kind of like that. I'll be curious to see how that goes.
Last question for the podcast. Joshua wants to know, do you think they'll ease Jonathan Taylor in this season, or will he get a significant amount of carries right away?
Joshua, it's a great question. What do you consider significant? Double digit? More? I don't know. I think he'll get double-digit carries from the onset. I don't think he'll be eased that much. I just don't think you can.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get quick return on him. And, I mean, at that position and given the collegiate resume he produced, find me a more NFL ready-made prospect out of the last X amount of years. I mean, if he's not ready-made, why the hell are you drafting him? It's like you got to play him, and you got to play him early. But it's a great problem to have. Great problem to have. All right. Is that it?
That's it.
That's it.
That concludes the Twitter questions.
Tons of them. We appreciate y'all sending them in. Thanks for listening to this edition of Kevin's Corner. Obviously, everyone stay safe out there. Thanks for my 2 or 3 minute rant that I went on earlier in the podcast. I know full well that you all listen to this for a break from the reality. So if you fast forward through it, I understand you. Hopefully you didn't, and just be a good freaking human being. Chris Presley, Evan Cox, Cheeks. Thanks, man. Thanks for being in here. Hopefully next Tuesday morning, we'll see. We're at the mercy of Baby Bowen right now. Appreciate all of you that have messaged me about that. Several fathers have messaged me, and I really, really take your advice very seriously, and I appreciate that. So for Chris Presley, I'm Kevin Bowen. Everybody have a great week, and thanks for listening to this edition of Kevin's Corner.